you wanted the best, you've got the best podcast, the hottest podcast in the world. The Chris Voss Show, the preeminent podcast with guests so smart you may experience serious brain bleed. The CEOs, authors, thought leaders, visionaries, and motivators. Get ready. Strap yourself in. Keep your hands, arms, and legs inside the vehicle at all times, because you're about to go on a monster education roller coaster with your brain. Now, here's your host, Chris Voss.
Hi, folks, it's Voss here from thechrisvossshow.com. Welcome to the big show, my friends and family, the greatest show on earth, or at least we like to think so. Maybe we're egotistical, maybe we're narcissistic, or maybe we're just really happy to have you here as a wonderful audience with our wonderful guests and brilliant minds who bring on the show, and some idiot who's running the mic as the host. I talk everyone up at me, so you got to throw yourself under the bus every now and then to keep yourself humble. I probably need a whole bus to drive over me and back over to be humbled, I guess. Maybe at this point the audience is like, yeah, he really does. Anyway, guys, go to goodreads.com where it says Chris Voss, linkedin.com where it says Chris Voss, Chris Voss one on the TikTok, and all those crazy places on the internet. Opinions expressed by guests on the podcast are solely their own and do not necessarily reflect the opinions of the host or the Chris Voss Show. Some guests of the show may be advertising on the podcast, but it is not an endorsement or review of any kind. Today's featured author comes to us from bookstolifemarketing.co.uk. With expert publishing to strategic marketing, they help authors reach their audience and maximize their book success. Today, we have an amazing young man on the show with us today. We're going to be talking about his insights in his book called Fool, Identifying and Overcoming Character Deficiency Syndrome, out July 21st, 2015. I think it's a book about me being the fool. Garry D Nation joins us on the show today. We're going to talk to him about his insights and everything else. He is a minister, author, speaker, educator, and blogger, and he also has a PhD, so we have to call him doctor. Does this look infected, Gary? No, I'm just kidding. He is also a musician, singer, and actor, and has appeared on stage and television in a number of independent and Christian films. Welcome to the show, Gary. How are you?
I'm doing great, Chris. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. It's wonderful to have you. Give us .coms, any sort of websites or social media you want people to follow you on.
SeriousChristian.com. And if you want to follow what I do as an actor, GarryNation.com.
Gary Nation. Can they find you on the IMDb over there?
They can find me on IMDb.
He's famous, folks. He's a movie star. Ask for his autograph when you see him. And a picture, too. So give us 30,000 overview. What's inside this book entitled Fool?
Let's start with the title. When I was working on a title, I was trying to figure out, and my sons who knew what I was doing said, my younger son said, Dad, just call it Fool. And my older son, who had been watching reruns of the A-Team, said, I think you need to call it Pity the Fool.
Pity the Fool. I love big.
But but I wanted to squeeze in there the term that I use to describe fool as an overarching theme, which is character deficiency syndrome. Now, in the Bible, and I'm working primarily with Proverbs and Ecclesiastes and some of the Psalms and the wisdom literature in the Bible. In the Bible, the word fool doesn't have anything to do with intelligence, almost all the time. The word fool, you see the word fool, and it translates about 4 or 5 different Hebrew words. And they're often separated and kept in their own little categories, and they're all used, and they all use the word fool to cover them. But each one has its own different shade of meaning. And as I was studying them and putting them together, this whole idea got started just for no better reason than to do a Wednesday night, have some material for a Wednesday night Bible study.
Serious.
And I started doing word studies on this, and I started putting them together. Then I started doing a little game. I started fitting the individual proverbs that are here and there and everywhere, started working to fit them together like pieces in a jigsaw puzzle. And when I started doing that, they came together and formed a pattern. Now, the word fool doesn't have anything to do with intelligence. It has to do with moral character and a deficiency of wisdom.
I see a lot of that on social media.
Wisdom, yeah, really. Wisdom starts with the fear of God. That means that deep-seated reverence and understanding that God is God and we're not.
Well, God is God and we're not. That's very clear to me right now, because if I was God, I don't know, I'd be throwing a party right now with some money and some I don't know, some free movies or something. I don't know.
For me, that's the absolute basis of all theology and all reality.
I'd be like off running around going.
Start at that point. Then you move into folly, which is understanding that God is God and we're not, is the beginning point of character. And folly is moving away from that, starting to make bad choices that are self-destructive. The question is, why do people make self-destructive choices and keep on making them? And that's what this book answers. It is a predictable syndrome of stages of folly, that it is a downward spiral into self-destruction.
So if I'm reading the book or going to read the book or listening to this audio broadcast, how do I know if I have character deficiency syndrome, or I guess technically behaving as a fool? Is that correct?
Yeah.
What are some identifying factors that tell me that, Chris, you need to shape up?
What I found out is that even in writing the book, we all do.
Yeah.
We all have some aspect of folly that we're pursuing in our lives, something that is in rebellion against God, is against God's law, against God's wisdom, his principles. And we're following that, and we know that God doesn't approve, but we think we can get away with it. Here are the stages of the fool, of that syndrome. It starts with the simple fool. The simple fool is naive. He doesn't really comprehend the consequences that are going to come from his choices. The worst thing that can happen to him is that he succeeds in doing what he is doing, that is
being
foolish. And so that leads into the second stage, which is and that is the self-confident fool. The self-confident, this is the word that is most common, especially in Proverbs. There's more to say about the self-confident fool than any other. And he is absolutely, I'll go through this material in a conference or seminar, and I'll be getting to this category of fool, and I'll start a rundown of the different characteristics, and I'll stop just before I get to the end of it. It says, how many of you already have somebody in mind right now that you know that fits this category? And almost everybody raises their hands. This is the most annoying person you know. He really is.
I think that's me they're usually referring to.
But the self-confident fool knows that there are going to be consequences, but he thinks that it's not going to affect him. He thinks he can get out of it. He thinks he'll escape the consequences. And then there's that third category of fool, which is the full-fledged fool. The Hebrew word is avil.
Avil?
Which we see it spelled out in English. It spells evil, but that's purely coincidental. There has nothing to do with it.
Okay.
But the committed fool is someone who has basically been converted to folly, in the same way that someone is converted to Christ. It has become a part of his nature. It's no longer his software, it's his operating system. It is it's the way he's going. I patterned a lot of what I did out of the studies of John Douglas, who was the FBI special agent who was one of the pioneers of criminal profiling. And he wrote in his book Mindhunter of a story in which he had arrested a thief who had been arrested and gone to prison a few times. And the guy's telling him, says, you can't get rid of us, John. It's part of our nature. It's who we are. And that is the description of the committed fool. Folly is now part of who he is. The proverb says, though you crush a fool in a mortar with a pestle, you will not separate his folly from him.
Oh.
And there is a very crude dimension of the committed fool, which is the Nabal. Mm-hmm. The Nabal, you might recognize that if you know the story of David. Mm-hmm. There was a man named Nabal who made some pretty foolish choices with regard to David. Mm-hmm. He was a man of such low character, his servants hated him, his slaves hated him, his wife hated him. And he didn't last long.
Oh, yeah.
But the Nabal, there is not a profile given of the Nabal in the Book of Proverbs. It's just used and said, you don't want to be this guy.
Ah, yeah. Well, no one wants to be the fool, right?
Nobody wants to be the fool.
Is there a song about that? Is that a song?
Yeah.
Anyway.
The Nabal has said in his heart, there is no God. Remember that verse from the Psalm, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God?
I don't.
There's a psalm that says, the fool has said in his heart, there is no God. That's the Nabal. Now, that's not to say that all atheists, all fools are atheists, but the Nabal has said in his heart, there is no God. He's determined. He's just gone the absolute opposite way of the fear of God, determining there is no God.
Oh, okay.
I'll not have to give account of this to anybody.
Yeah. So let me ask you about this. Before starting writing, you wrote 2 chapters on wisdom.
Yes.
Why did you do that? And is that what led you to write the full book then?
Actually, I had the material on the fool, and I realized there's got to be some balance here. If you don't understand what wisdom is, you really can't understand what folly is. But wisdom is making a life of choices that are coherent with who God is and what he has installed in creation to be. This is the way that God has set up both the moral universe and the material world that we live in is set up according to wisdom. Yep. And our wisdom is to make connection with God's wisdom. Mm-hmm. That's when we become wise.
Yeah, becoming wise. Now, is this your first book you've ever written, or did you write other books before this?
Other than my dissertation, this was the first full-length book that I've written.
Oh, well, congratulations. Now, are you? I think you're anticipating writing another. Is that correct, if I remember rightly?
Actually, I have the biggest back burner of anybody in the world as far as planned projects is concerned. But yeah, there are other books that I have in mind to write. One of them that I really want to write is on the essentials of worship. What really is essential in worship that is universal across all Christian traditions? What are the absolute, irreplaceable essentials of worship? And so I would like to write a book on that. There are some other things I'd love to write on.
Well, that might be a really good book to take and cover and, extend out the series of what you've talked about here so that you can more in depth the details there. You pointed out in the book, both folly and wisdom are personified in Proverbs as women in the marketplace. What is that comparison about?
And the comparison and the contrast is striking. First of all, the comparison. Both wisdom and folly are depicted as women. Now, Solomon did this deliberately. There are so many who accuse, and Solomon, of course, you look at his personal life, you could certainly accuse him of sexism. There are so many who accuse the Bible of sexism, but it's not there. What you've got here is that wisdom is out in the marketplace hustling like crazy and calling attention to herself and calling attention particularly to the simple, because they're the ones who are still the most open to hearing a word and saying, get wisdom, come to me. I will give you life. I will give you freedom. I will give you joy. Come to me. And then on the other side, there is wisdom that is depicted as folly, and folly is depicted as a harlot. I prefer that term rather than the other cruder forms, or law enforcement terms. But folly is depicted as a harlot, as someone who is luring the simple into immorality, luring them into bad choices, luring them into a life that looks like it's going to be a life of freedom, but ultimately is going to end up as a life of heartache. And so the contrasts are there, and the contrasts are as striking as the similarities.
So the other question I had for you that I wanted to ask you, if I can find my notes again, do you have a favorite passage about the fool?
I do. There is a whole biblical passage. There's a whole chapter in Proverbs. Let me get it out and like that in which I call the Fool's Essay. And it's almost like a stand-up routine. It's one liner after another that just slays the fool.
Oh, okay.
Let a bear robbed of her cubs meet a man rather than a fool in his folly.
Oh, wow.
Luxury is not fitting for a fool. Now, I say this as like a stand-up routine. I think if we get away from the idea that the Bible is holy, that we're talking about religious literature and all of this, I think this is hilarious. I think that the people of that time would have read this and have been laughing through the whole thing. Luxury is not fitting for a fool, much less for a servant to have rule over princes. As snow in summer and as rain in harvest, so honor is not fitting for a fool. A whip for the horse, a bridle for the ass, and a rod for the fool's back. Answer not a fool according to his folly, lest you also be like him. Answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own conceit. He who sends a message by the hand of a fool is cutting off his feet and drinking poison. As the legs of the lame hang limp, so is a proverb in the mouth of fools. As he who binds a stone in a sling, so is he who gives honor to a fool. That's an amazing proverb. You've got a sling. So you don't bind a stone in a sling. That's not what a sling's for. A sling is to let a stone go. You bind a stone in a sling, what is it going to do? It's going to come back and hit you in the face. That's what it is to give honor to a fool. As a thorn that goes into the hand of a drunkard, so is a proverb in the mouth of fools. Like an archer who wounds at random is he who hires a fool or any passerby. As a dog returns to his vomit, so a fool returns to his folly. And now here's the stinger. You've got all of these things running down, and this is talking about the self-confident fool, the guy who I said, this is the most annoying person you know. At the end of it says, you see a man who is wise in his own eyes, there's more hope for a fool than for him. Whoa.
Yeah.
It all comes down to that little boom. Said, you think you're smarter than this guy. You think you're better than this guy. Are you wise in your own eyes? Are you wise because you think you're wise? And so he's making us look at that and look back at ourselves and hold the mirror up and see, is he really talking about me? Is the joke on me? And so that's part of the power of the Book of Proverbs. And all of those are put together. It's a rather unusual passage. Usually these Proverbs are scattered out, but this groups them together in a way that shows it was deliberate.
Now, you say in the book that it distinguishes between the self-confident fool and the committed fool. Did we just identify what separates them, or have we discussed that yet? I'm not sure.
The self-confident fool thinks he can escape the consequences. The committed fool doesn't care if there are consequences. The committed fool has moved over into an area of life in which this is me. This is who I am. This is the way I'm going to live. And it can be a number of things. And that it could be crime. I've presented this material in a prison. Most all of the return offenders, the recidivist inmates in prison, are in the committed fool category. But the deal is not all committed fools are criminals.
Yeah.
Some of them are religious leaders.
Yeah.
But their folly goes in a different direction.
Interesting.
They have their religious profession.
Out of all the fools, what's the worst kind of fool?
There is a terminal aspect of folly, and that is the scorner. Now, that's what he's called in the King James Bible, and I prefer to use that. The modern translations usually use scoffer or some similar word to that, but I like the more archaic word scorner, because at the root of the Hebrew word is lutz. At the root meaning of that word is to scorn and to be scornful. And the scorner is someone who has gone beyond not caring that there are consequences. The scorner wants everybody else to be like him. And will be an evangelist for his folly. The scorner is, I think, there's a lot of discussion in the Gospels about Jesus, one of Jesus' most controversial teachings, and that is the so-called unforgivable sin. When Jesus told his disciples, whoever blasphemes the Son of Man shall be forgiven, but whoever blasphemes the Holy Spirit shall never be forgiven. And there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of kneading of that verse and trying to figure that out and going this and that. I find a lot of connection between what the wisdom literature calls the scorner and what Jesus is describing as someone who has blasphemed the Holy Spirit. That make sense?
Yeah, sure does. How does the gospel provide hope for turning one's life around, even after destroying it through folly and self-destructive choices?
That's an interesting thing. Let's start with the simple fool. The simple fool is correctable, but you've got to get his attention. And sometimes that attention can be gotten, sometimes they can be scared straight, so to speak. They can see what happens to the scorner. They can see what happens to the committed fool and realize, I don't want to go that way. They can start with an appeal, but you've got to get their attention. With the self-confident fool, likewise, you have to get his attention, but it's a whole lot harder. And what I see in the Proverbs and what I've discovered in personal life, personal counseling, he's got to be shaken in some way in order to get his attention. Something's got to come into his life that really interrupts his self-confidence and makes him realize he doesn't have it all together. He doesn't know how to get out of this, and he needs rescue. The committed fool is the hardest of all. And there is only one verse that I see in the entire, one passage in the entire scripture, and it's in a psalm. I can't bring the name of the psalm or the number of the psalm to mind right away, but it's in one of the hundreds. But there's a psalm that talks about how fools are brought to the extremity of their lives. And they cry out to the Lord, and he hears them and rescues them.
Wow.
But the committed fool really has to reach the extremity of their lives. What recovering alcoholics often call hitting bottom. They really have to reach the absolute extremity. The scornful fool, I don't see any hope for him. The grace of God is wide and deep, but the grace of God does not reach into unrepentance. And so the hope, but what the gospel brings is a new message of hope. This is not about just moral reform. Moral reform can happen in anybody's life. Almost anybody in these stages, especially these first two stages of character deficiency syndrome, almost anybody can get their lives cleaned up. But not everyone can be completely delivered from folly until they turn to the grace of God that is offered to us in Jesus Christ, who, the New Testament says, is the wisdom of God. And they start to draw, and the New Testament writers draw a connection between Jesus as the wisdom of God and wisdom as personified in the Book of Proverbs. And there are theologians who make connections about that, and they have a good time with showing those connections. But Jesus Christ becomes our wisdom. And by faith in him, we connect with his wisdom, and we can receive his wisdom into our lives and begin our lives according to what God's pattern for us is. And it now becomes God's project in our lives to make us into the image of Jesus Christ.
All right.
That's what the real meaning of the commonly quoted verse Romans 8:28 is. All things work together for good to those that love God, to those who are called according to his purpose. For whom he did foreknow, he did predestinate to be the firstborn among many brethren. Whom he did predestinate, them he called. Whom he called, he also justified. Whom he justified, he also glorified. And all of this is to form us into the image of Christ. That's what his purpose is.
So as we go out, we had the great comment come in here for you. It was from Leslie Ladyhawk. Thank you. Thanks for having Garry on. I've followed him for several years. He's down to earth and kind demeanor, makes him an excellent example of a godly man, which we need more of in this day and age. Blessings. Thank you, Leslie, for your comment there. Garry, as we go out, any final things you want to talk about or discuss as we wrap the show?
Well, a couple of things. One is my acting career that I got into. What really brought me into what I'm doing as an actor now began 11 years ago when the motion picture Polycarp was released, in which I played the title character Polycarp, the second century Christian martyr. And that became an award-winning motion picture. It had won a lot of awards at various film festivals, including an award at the International Christian Film Festival in Orlando for me. And that's what really brought me into what I am doing today. And for those who are interested in that, they can look up my actor's website, GarryNation.com. The Book Fool, I'm not sure. We don't have a release date on the new edition that's going to be under the imprint of, remind me.
Books to Life?
Yeah, Books for Life. Proper names escape me. It's an age.
I'm bad at names too. I'm good at faces. Like I remember faces really well.
Yeah.
But names.
Yeah.
I'm more interested
but yeah,
in
Books
the
for Life.
interaction.
It'll be releasing under Books for Life, which is opening a bookstore in the UK coming up in early February. And they're hoping to have my book ready to feature in their opening display. So it could be as soon as that. We'll see.
Well, we'll look forward to seeing that. People can stay in touch with you. Give us the other .org, I think it is, for your thing.
SeriousChristian.org. Serious Christian as one word, no breaks in the word, SeriousChristian.org. And they can check in there, find out, and also connect to my podcast. I do a podcast under the title Insight, ! With Garry Nation. And it's available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Pandora, SoundCloud. You can find it most places that things are podcast.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the show. We really appreciate it, Garry. Very insightful and thoughtful work you've done here.
I appreciate it, Chris. Thank you.
Thank you. Order up his book wherever fine books are sold. Excuse me. Assuming my voice will hold up. Fool.
Yeah. You can get this one. You can still get this one on Amazon. It's available on Amazon still.
Order up, folks. It's called Fool, Identifying and Overcoming Character Deficiency Syndrome, out July 21st, 2015, and watch for further books from Garry as well. Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. Thanks for other comment. Thanks for Garry for inviting me to this very informative from D. Lewis, and then such a great author from Raymond Otum. Wonderful referrals here. Thank you to my audience for tuning in. Be good to each other. Stay safe. Go to goodreads.com/Chris Voss, LinkedIn.com/Chris Voss, Facebook.com/Chris Voss, YouTube.com/Chris Voss, and all those crazy places on the internet. Stay safe. We'll see you guys next.
You've been listening to the most amazing, intelligent podcast ever made to improve your brain and your life. Warning, consuming too much of the Chris Voss Show podcast can lead to people thinking you're smarter, younger, and irresistible sexy. Consume in regularly moderated amounts. Consult a doctor for any resulting brain bleed.
All right, Garry, we've got us out.